This is Captian Roan here today at Mike's Bait House. We're going to be tying some Flair hawk jigs today, or other people call them red-tailed hawks. We pour our own hot lips heads for these. I like the hot lips. It kind of looks cool. It's got a big flare area in the back of the jig head. That's important to get them to flare. We use a heavy-duty 6-aught jig hook, black nickel, so they're real strong. Anyways, that's the head. This is the head on the thing. We do them a little bit special here. We use a fish skull material called faux bucktail. It actually is a synthetic, but it's a tapered synthetic, so it tapers out and it moves really well in the water. We also use a special red hair that we buy from overseas and bring it in just for these jigs. It moves and it flows very well. Anyways, it's a pretty easy tie. Start our thread, lay a base. I want a little base on here because I've got to lock this in with this synthetic, and if you don't lay a base, it's hard to lock it down. We're going to be 2 applications of material, but it's got to go around evenly. So we're going to take our material, take a about a pencil size round hank of it, trim it off. You see how stiff it is. This is tapered, so you have to trim it to the size you want basically the jig to be ahead of time, because this is a naturally, or not naturally, but a tapered material. So we bring it right to the point of where you tie it in, butting it up against the front part of it, make about 4 or 5 wraps, and then we're going to use our fingers to actually bring it around the hook evenly. This takes a little bit of practice to try to get it to spread out evenly. Once you get that, you lock it all the way in with your wraps and come forward and lock this whole hank of hair in. You want your wraps to be even and not crisscrossed. That's important when using this material, because if you crisscross your wraps, they don't lock the hair down. Alright, so that's the bottom of the jig. We're going to do the same thing for the top of the jig. Take another hank that's close to a pencil, maybe just a little less than a pencil. Trim it off. Trim it to size with your fingers and your thumbs. This is going to measure it out to exactly the length you want. Put it in right on top, butt it up against the front part of the jig where the bend is, 5 or 6 wraps. Bring it around with your finger so that it connects and somewhat a little bit overlaps the other one. Tighten her down. Look to the other side, make sure it's all the way around and connected. Tighten it down all the way to the point where they're seamless. Now you have a jig that's seamless. You're going to wrap forward on it. You notice how they're a little bit longer on that one? I wanted a little shortened. It was looking a little bit long when I put it on, so I want to shorten it. So I'm just going to trim it right to the point of the front of that wrap. You can do that easily with a good pair of razor scissors. And then we're going to wrap in behind it so that locks everything in. It's not going to bother me a bit to have that over, because that even locks that hair in better. And we break it down and come over top of it, and then that locks all that hair in. We bring it back so that it flares against the jig back body there, and that's what makes that flare in a Flair hawk. Come back over it again, lock everything down. Now we're going to invert the jig, and I like to put my accent hair or my hawk or whatever you want to call it on the back side of the jig. Trim it up I've already trimmed this to the size I want it. Tie it in right on the back in a one application. That's going to about 2 inches over to 3 inches, depending on how much motion you want in it. Retie that straight down on top. Clean up your thread wraps. And you have a Mike's Bait House Naples Best Custom Jigs Flair Hawk. Clean up these little ends so that you don't see them. Make sure your thread wraps go back and forth. Nice and even. I like to whip finish with a whip finishing tool on all my jigs. That way I'm sure that they're going to be over and straight right on top of each other. 6 times. Tighten, cut, and glue. I like the Loctite glues. It penetrates into all the thread wraps and all the synthetic materials. And it also makes a very shiny coat on the outside. So there you have it. Mike's Bait House Flair Hawk in white and red. Come and get some if you want to get some to catch some big snook offshore. Grouper, cobia, works on everything. Or tie them yourself. We have some of the material here. Thanks guys, have a good day. Bye.